Welcome to Chaverim. Usually we get a call, there's a flat tire. What do? Let's say it says flat tire, 68th Drive, 140th Street. We respond, cue whatever your number is, responding to flat tire. We call the person who has a flat tire back, say we're on the way, we'll be there shortly. We get to the scene, we make sure that we're parked safely, that the tire can be changed safely, and once that's established, we can continue. The first thing to do when you change a flat tire is to always make sure that the emergency brake is on. So let's go inside, put the emergency brake on. Every car is different, but usually the emergency brake is either on the left side of the brake pedal or in other cars, it's in the middle console where you pull it up. On this vehicle, you just push it down with your foot and the brake is engaged. Other ones, when they're in the middle console, you lift it up and that'll engage the emergency brake. I cannot stress enough the importance of the emergency brake for many reasons. Number one, safety. You don't want to have this car on 3 tires and because the brake's not on, it falls down or it moves or it shifts. Number one, you'll get hurt. Number two, which is another huge factor, you will damage the car tremendously if that car falls on the brakes without a tire on them. This is why you don't want to make sure that the car itself is not going anywhere when you're jacking it up. Which will lead me to the next step. There are 3 typical types of ways to loosen the lug nuts. There's one from the wrench that comes from the car itself. And if it looks similar to this, you're in luck. Because the way this is designed is what's used to jack up the car is the actual same size as the lug nut itself. So if you see, you put this on the lug nut and you loosen it, you have to twist it around a little bit. It's not as easy as some of the other methods, but it does work. That's one method. Next, we have a breaker bar. This is a breaker bar. It's longer and it'll give you more leverage than what was issued from the dealer. With the breaker bar, you will need sockets. What the sockets do, they come in different sizes and there are about 3 or 4 common sizes. You buy a set breaker bar, you take your socket, you put it on, attach it, hook it onto one of the lug nuts, turn it, loosen it, and that's method number 2. Method number 3, you have a X, a T, with multiple different sizes of lug nut sizes. So let's try to find the one that's good for here. Oh, look at that, I found it. So once we have that on, we pull it, loosen it, and we're good to go. The other thing that's very important when you're changing a tire, to make sure you have one to replace it with, a spare in the trunk. If you do not have a spare tire, you do not want to start jacking up a car with nothing to replace it with. Now, we have 2 types of jacks. We have the jack that the car comes with, and you have a better one, a hydraulic jack that could be purchased or is Chaverim issued. Honestly, I prefer the hydraulic one because it's a lot easier and a lot faster. But for now, I am going to demonstrate how to use the standard issue jack just in case you don't have a hydraulic jack. But one safety issue, which I mentioned before, because what we do is great, but you know what, we have to do things safely, because if we're in danger or the vehicle's going to be damaged, we can't do it. Before we even start jacking up the car, I always loosen the lug nuts a little bit, because when you have a lug nut wrench like this, one second, let me find the one that fits. This one fits. When you have one like this, you're going to be jerking the car back and forth. You don't want to do that when the car's on a jack. You'd rather loosen it now as opposed to when it's on a jack. So let's see how this goes over here by loosening it a little bit. Okay, you don't want to take off too much. You don't want to loosen it too much. You just want to make it that you could hand loosen it after the fact. Okay, now that the lug nuts are loose, we're going to take the jack and put it under the car. Now, I don't know if you'll be able to see this from here, but there is a rail underneath here.
Every car has one?
Every car has a rail, metal rail here. If you put the jack over here and towards the front, you're going to bend the whole door.
But if you're not sure where the notch is, you can always, number one, check the owner's manual in the car. That will tell you where it is. This jack that Jonathan is using right now actually comes with the car, and if you look at it, it shows you on the jack where to locate the notches.
You see the rail that I was referring to?
Yeah.
If you see that rail on the jack, it tells you exactly where it is. And this flange over here slips directly inside of that, and this way it's really almost impossible to get it wrong unless you're not being careful and not looking.
Right. And now if you're using your own jack, which Jonathan is going to demonstrate after this, if you cannot locate the notch by yourself, and again, after a few calls, you will be able to find it on every car. But if you can't find it yourself, you can always request backup, another unit to come and assist you.
Before you put your jack down and start lifting the car, make sure you're on solid ground. If you're going to put your jack in a pile of mud or sand, you're not going to get anywhere. The car's not going to go up, your jack is just going to go down. You really have to make sure that you have something sturdy and stable underneath the jack. So now that I've established I have a street, which holds cars, so I'm assuming it's going to hold my jack, I'm going to continue jacking it up. So we showed you how to use the factory issue jack. Now we're going to use a hydraulic jack. And we're going to look for the same spot. We're going to look for that same part of the frame to lift it up, like we said before. Otherwise, we're going to mess up the whole car. As you see, this is much faster and a lot more efficient. But at the same time, like I said before, make sure your jack is in a secure and stable place where it can't move anywhere, it can't sink, it can't roll.
How high does the car need to be lifted?
Good question. The car should be at least high enough where the tire that is flat is off the ground by at least 2 inches or so.
So in this case, obviously you're with a full tire, so you're going up a little higher, but in most cases you want to make sure that the car is off the ground just enough that you can pull the tire off and slip the spare on.
Correct. So now I'm going to go back to using my T-lug nut wrench, and now that all the lug nuts are loose, I'm going to be taking off the nuts themselves one by one. I also like this because you can spin it. Makes life a lot easier. So now we have all the lug nuts off. We're going to remove the tire. Sometimes the tire doesn't want to come off. Could be for one of two reasons. I think in this situation, I didn't jack it up high enough. So therefore, I'm going to jack it up a little bit more. There we go. Oh no, it's still tight. What am I gonna do? I can't get it off. What do? Give it a little kick with your foot. It'll loosen it. Tire comes right off. Now we're ready to put the new tire back on. So the key is to line up the holes with the lugs. We put the lug nuts on, going across from each other.
That way the tire goes on straight. Otherwise it's
Right, see? There we go.
It doesn't come off. It doesn't come off.
So now we're going to take our lovely wrench again. We're going to tighten the lug nuts. And like we put them on, we're going to tighten them across from each other. I'm tightening them. I'm not making them too tight. The reason I'm not making them too tight is because I don't want to pull and jerk the car while it's on the jack, because if I do that, then there's a risk of it falling. Tighten it. Last one. Good. Now, once our tire is in place, we go by the jack.
Slowly.
And we very slowly lower the car down. This has a little thing sticking out over here that the bar goes on, and you turn it slowly and the jack slowly releases. Now once that's done, we go back, because remember we tightened them but we didn't make them very tight. So now the car's not on the jack anymore. We can make it tight. You saw the way the car just jerked? You don't want anything jerking in the car while it's on the jack. And that is how we change a flat tire.